We're joined from West London by the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell. Very good morning to you. I mean, ultimately, what does Labour think of the prorogation?
Pretty angry. I think we're reflecting, well, I don't think it's just Labour. I think we're reflecting the views of the opposition parties in Parliament, certainly. And I think we're reflecting the views of a large number of Conservatives as well. And that includes people like John Major, a former Conservative Prime Minister, who's actually going to court to try and prevent the prorogation. I think people feel that, you know, we live in a parliamentary democracy and people have given their lives to secure that parliamentary democracy and certain basic rights. And one of them is to ensure that Parliament and the people are sovereign. And just because a Prime Minister is worried that they'll lose a vote in Parliament, to then use the tactic of closing down Parliament in our parliamentary democracy is unacceptable.
And yet, prorogation is, a part of setting up a new parliament, a part of making sure that a Queen's speech can be delivered. I mean, in May, your shadow leader of the Commons, Valerie Vaz, made it very clear that she and the party were very unhappy that you hadn't had a Queen's speech, and very confused that there was no specific date for a new session. I do not know of any other government being run like this, she said. You've got your Queen's speech now. It's all in place. Why aren't you happy with that?
Nobody believes that this is the normal process of Parliament, the prorogation. Of course, what you normally have is prorogation. You have a week off or maybe 10 days, something like that. Then you have the Queen's speech. And that would be the normal running of Parliament. This isn't about the normal running of Parliament. And to be honest, Conservative MPs who come on the media, and Boris Johnson in particular, I think are insulting the intelligence of the British people if they think we're going to fall for that. And you said yourself, Ben Wallace, the Conservative minister, let the cat out of the bag. This is because they haven't got a majority in Parliament for this particular vote. So, like a dictator, what Boris Johnson is doing, I'm going to close down Parliament because Parliament might vote against me. We can't accept that. Just imagine if Jeremy Corbyn had done that, the outrage that there would have been on Conservative benches right the way across. Well, there is outrage on Conservative benches, even because it's Boris Johnson. More importantly, I think there are very many people in the country who are angry that, you cannot allow a Prime Minister to act in this way. Just because they're going to lose a vote, they close down Parliament. What happens if, not just on this issue, other issues come up? Is it going to be normal practice from here on in to allow a Prime Minister of any political party to close down Parliament in that way? I think we're on a slippery slope if we allow it to happen this time.
Well, you're not out of parliamentary time yet. You've got this coming week, which is no doubt going to be a pretty busy one. What are you trying to get through?
Right, OK. We have got a week, but don't underestimate how difficult it is to legislate within a week. And the Prime Minister knows that, and that's why he's proroguing Parliament, to try and prevent us doing it. The cross-party group that has been meeting, that includes Conservative MPs as well, group of legal experts, constitutional experts, MPs with decades of experience are now looking to see how on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday of next week we can introduce a legislative measure which will enable us to prevent a no deal without parliamentary approval. Now, the technique of that will be published on the Tuesday, and I'm hoping that we'll have a debate in which we can bring the House together, because I think there are a large number of people in all political parties in the House of Commons now who are actually saying to Boris Johnson, look, this is a wrong move, think again. And I think some calmer and wiser heads, exactly like David Gauke has said now, I think are coming into play. And I'm hoping at the meeting that the Conservative MPs have with Boris Johnson tomorrow are able to persuade him to pull back from this measure.
Well, David Gauke wouldn't confirm that he is pushing to get Article 50 extended. Is that an actual aim of the Labour Party?
Well, like David, I'm not going into the details of what will be brought forward because the people are working together on a cross-party basis. Yes, some elements in confidence to maintain support, but maintain respect for their different views. And what I think we'll see is a group of people putting party political politics to one side to look after the interests of the country, but also not just about Brexit. I think actually this has gone beyond the Brexit issue as well. This is about parliamentary sovereignty as well. So I think you'll see people coming together, I think taking a wise decision on how best, therefore, to secure a route through this. And I'm hoping even at this late stage, I'm hoping that Boris Johnson, maybe, Dominic Cummings, his key advisor, who seems to be running Number 10 and the Treasury at the moment, I'm hoping that they'll listen and pull back.
People, though, are going to want to know what your ultimate goal is here. Because if you're just trying to get... If you're
the ultimate goal, Stephen...
No, give me a second. If you're trying to get a good deal, a good, a renegotiated withdrawal agreement, which the EU says it's not going to do, there is a very real argument to be made, isn't there, that says if you actually strip away the power of the Prime Minister to leave with no deal, what you actually do is take away his negotiating hand, and you're not going to get a decent deal.
No, the ultimate goal, very straightforwardly, this week is to ensure that Parliament can have a final say. That's the first thing. We cannot have a Prime Minister overriding Parliament, not just on this issue, on any issue. So the ultimate goal this week is to secure parliamentary sovereignty. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, as far as I'm concerned, the goal is to prevent a no deal, because I think a no deal would be incredibly damaging. There's no mandate for a no deal. So, of course, but the most important thing this week is to make sure that Parliament can have a say on that. We can't have a situation where Parliament has no say purely because a Prime Minister thinks they can lose a vote.
If you don't get the numbers this coming week, which of course is a possibility, then there's been all the talk of the idea of a vote of confidence in the government. Is that still on the table as far as Labour's concerned?
Oh yes, it is. It has to be. It has to be. Our view is we've got to use every mechanism we possibly can to prevent a no deal, and that clearly is still on the table. The problem that we've got is, exactly as other constitutional experts have said, that actually the problem is time, and that's why the Prime Minister has used this measure. It's very difficult to get legislation through in a matter of a few days, and the Prime Minister knows that, and that's why they're using this tactic. I think it's a very grubby, measure, and as I say, it's unprecedented, and we can't allow a Prime Minister to act in this way. Just think, if there's another issue that comes up that any Prime Minister could be defeated on, and they just say, well, blow that, I'll close down Parliament. But undermines everything about our constitutional status that we now have.
But people are questioning whether actually the no confidence option is a real one for the Labour Party. Jacob Rees-Mogg has been writing in the Mail on Sunday today saying you're not prepared to do it really because it could well force a general election. And the Mail on Sunday Delta poll out today has you 11 points behind the Conservatives. You don't want a general election really, do you?
Well, look, let me just say a message to Boris Johnson via you. General election, bring it on. At the last general election, we were 24 points behind and we virtually drew level with the Conservatives. If he wants to bring a general election, bring it about. But what we're saying this week, actually, the more important thing is not about party advantage or anything like that. It is actually making sure we secure the basis of our democracy, parliamentary sovereignty, but also it's a matter of ensuring that for us, for many of us, it's about blocking no deal, because no deal under the government's own assessments could be catastrophic for our economy, for people's jobs and for people's living standards. So of course we're going to oppose a measure like that.
If you're so opposed to a no deal and the EU are saying we're not actually going to renegotiate the withdrawal agreement, do you wish you'd voted for it now?
No, I went into negotiations for 6 weeks with members of the cabinet, the Tory cabinet, to try and see if we could agree a deal. There was virtually no movement whatsoever. We couldn't agree a deal that would protect jobs and the economy, so there was no way that we could sign up for it. And then also, when we went through those negotiations, we were negotiating with Conservatives who accepted that at the end of the day they couldn't deliver on a deal either. and they were falling apart. In fact, they were arguing in front of us. So that was not feasible. Well, we did our best, but we couldn't secure a deal that we felt could protect jobs in the economy. And on that basis, we couldn't sign up to anything.
Look, on Wednesday, we know obviously part of the whole plan this week is to take control of parliamentary business, to control the order papers. If that happens, will we still get the spending review? Would that still happen?
Well, that'll be determined by the government. They will determine the agenda beyond the issue around whether or not we can sort out a parliamentary process to deal with Brexit. If the government do bring its spending review forward, obviously we'll analyse it. But what I'm concerned about is that spending review is actually a spending round. It's a one-year spending review it's not the normal process. So it looks to me, like a pre-election stunt, a gimmick budget, if you like, where they'll promise spend a bit of money here and there based upon what they're reading on the opinion polls. But already what we're seeing is that a lot of the money that they're promised, sort of re-announcements of existing money, goes nowhere near enough to tackle the backlog of austerity over the last 9 years under the Tories. And it is pretty disillusioning for many of those professionals on the front line who really do need long-term, stable investment in their public services.
And yet, I mean, if the government loses control of Parliament this week, you stand a real chance, don't you, of being accused, and the spending review doesn't happen. You could stand accused of actually stopping £400 million extra for schools, £2 billion for hospitals, an additional 20,000 police officers
No, not at all.
over 3 years. People could turn around and say, well, you've stopped that happening.
No, not at all. What we'll make sure we do this week, I hope, is prevent a no deal, make sure we have restoration of parliamentary sovereignty, but also we'd be quite happy to accommodate the government. If it wants an extra few days for the spending review, I'd be quite happy to accommodate them. But actually, I'd like a real spending review, one that really does end austerity, that really does put investment back into our public services, not what is an electioneering stunt by the looks of it from what's coming from the government at the moment.
John McDonnell, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.